Okay, let's go.
Welcome everybody to Spooky Mysteries. Today's episode, this is actually a reshoot because I'd already done this before, but I'd messed it up completely because I was using a soundboard and I had the reverb up, which is completely my fault. That's an amateur mistake. But let's get on with it. Oh, and actually, I'm going to clip this and move this to the front, right? So let me just mark this clip right here. I'm going to put a link in the bio. Please follow it. It's for a contest for Halloween. Vote for me, favorite spooky podcaster. I'm still peeved that I did not end up on that Instagram, TikTok, as spooky podcasters or as spooky content creators to follow. I'm just joking about that. So, like in the previous week, I told a story about how I almost got into a fight with like 8 individuals, right? And this is either from a gang known as Northside or as MS-13. Now, both gangs are pretty bad. One's way worse than the other because it's labeled as a terrorist threat. So that's the one we're talking about today. So it is true. I have had run-ins with this notorious gang. It was MS, a recap, when I was growing up in a relatively safe small town of Carrollton, Texas. So Carrollton, Texas, where it's at, right? There was nothing going on there. It was really boring. We actually had to go to North Dallas to go do stuff because Carrollton, Texas is very small. Nothing really happens there. That's just the breaks, right? Oh, I'm in my office. Yeah, I'm in my office here. Escaping the darkness. That's what it's going to be called. Or leaving the darkness. That's going to be what it's called on YouTube. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Except in some apartments, there was a wave of new people moving in from El Salvador. And not just El Salvador. It was from any Latin American country, right? But predominantly El Salvador. Now, I know most Mexicans have problems with other Hispanics. It's just a stereotype that just happens, right? But that's not me. I'm friends with everybody. As my next story is going to tell you, I'm friends with everybody. I don't care who you are. Some backstory in Carrollton. There was a few local gangs there. There were the Sureños, Norteños, MS-13, Eastside Homeboys, Folks, Folks, but they were like the Northsiders. They're pretty much Northsiders. Anyways, then you had me. I was friends with all of them. I was friends with everybody. I did not discriminate. I don't care who you are, what you did. If you were cool with me, that was it. That's all I needed. Just be cool. Don't bring your drama to me. Trigger warning with the what we're talking about today. I do go over some very sensitive subjects such as infanticide and femicide. So please, if you are sensitive to that, this is one of your warnings. And before I actually go over anything like that, I will give you another warning. So, back to my story and then we'll get into the main story. So one day as I was walking to a friend's house in Carrollton, I was walking over there because I didn't have a car. I was too young, right? Anyways, I didn't have a car. I wasn't supposed to drive. I'm afraid that. A brown, and I'm always going to remember this, a brown, like a khaki colored Chevy Blazer pulled up in front of me and 8 guys jumped out of it. The passenger driver door, back passenger driver door, both opened up. All 4 of them opened up and the back trunk opened up and 8 guys jumped out. Now, little context for this, Northside and MS-13 both wear khaki or brown and white, right? My favorite color is always and will always be blue. So I wore blue and white. I wore blue Dickies and a white shirt. Just standard. Actually, no, I think that day I was wearing my blue checkered shirt, my Cholo shirt. Imagine Cholos and that blue pattern shirt that they had, I had one of those. I had one of those. I gave it away recently. For a little context, so that's what I wore, right? So I looked like a rival gang member because that is opposite of what they wear. They all jumped out and were ready to kick my ass. They were just itching for it. They were ready. So, being who I am, I didn't back down. I, squared up a little bit, stood steady, balled up my fist, and I was like, let's do this. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So, I wasn't going to go down easy, so I waited. And as they approached, one of them says, it's Joe, or it's my middle name, Frankie, Francisco, whatever. They knew me. They recognized me, and they all turned away, jumped back in the car, and took off. Did I panic? No, I was ready to fight. Did I go home? No, I just went to my friend's house. I wasn't gonna let these guys punk me out like that. That's not who I am. So went about my day, went home, called it a day. Right? I'm always gonna remember that because 8 guys jumped out and almost kicked my ass. So enough about my story with them. This is a story of MS-13, and it's not what I've heard or what I've looked up. It's what I know because I saw this documentary a long time ago. B, I know who it was about. Like I knew them personally. So this is what we're talking about, right? They grew up in Carrollton, and after this happened, after this documentary aired, there was a project called Project Cleanup or Project Clean Sweep or something like that. And it was Carrollton with the feds, and they kicked them out. Well, not all of them, but they kicked out most of them. They relocated up north. So this is what they do. They go to small communities, MS-13, and they recruit children. They are not like, oh, we don't recruit kids. We don't recruit. No. They recruit children, elementary aged kids into this gang. So with the youth already in, so like once they already get the kids in, right? And they grow up, now you got these kids that have always been in the gang life. That's all they know. And they grow up, and now guess what? They are full-fledged gangbangers. They are just hardcore thugs at this point. So let me give you a little bit of history of MS-13, and this I did look up. I'm not going to lie. The gang gets its origins back in the 80s. Now, they started as a protection for its people, Salvadorians, with great intentions, you know. They created themselves. They got together to protect themselves from other gangs in the area of Los Angeles where they were predominantly located. Now, they just were trying to protect themselves, keep each other safe. Over time, the well intentions ended, and they found that their real power was the numbers that they had. And that's when the real trouble started in the 90s. So during the Salvadoran Civil War, many were deported back to El Salvador, where the spread of the gang made it across Central America. While mainly comprised of Salvadorans, it's a wide mix of Hispanics. Like I said, children are usually the first recruited. Now, how do you join? Depending on who you are, there's two different ways. If you're a woman, there's two different ways. If you're a guy, there's really only one way. So, for guys, you can get what's called jumped in. In other words, you just get an ass beating. And it's not just 1, 2 people at a time. No, it's a group. It's like 13 guys at once just kicking your ass. Okay? If you're a woman, you can take both options. You can take either be that, get jumped in, or have a train ran on you. And if you don't know what that is, Urban Dictionary is your best friend on that one. But to be a gang member, they do have requirements. So you don't just get to be jumped in and that's it, right? That's like your initiation. You got to pay your dues. And how do you do that? You got to commit a crime. And they're not asking for simple crimes. They're not like go steal a car, go rob somebody, go beat somebody up. No, they want murder. That's it. They want murder. You got to murder somebody. Now this isn't everywhere, but it is, and it is the predominant way of getting in. So they went from humble protection all the way up to the most heinous violence. Again, trigger warning. We're going to be talking about some really heavy stuff. And I mention it right now, so. All the way up to femicide and infanticide. They are not doing this behind closed doors. They do this publicly to send a message to the public that they do not care about the law. They believe that their numbers are too great to be affected. So if you take one of them out, they get caught, whatever, right? Killing somebody. They're like, oh, there's like 8 more guys waiting to take my spot. It's good. They don't see it as a bad thing to get arrested. They became so effective and so brutal that the high-ranking officials, so the higher you were in the gang, the more bodies you had under your name, whatever, right? You were recruited by the cartels, like the Sinaloa cartel, Los Zetas, those guys. They were like, oh, you made a name for yourself. Come to the big leagues. So what makes them brutal and terrifying is their weapon of choice. While most gangs usually use guns, they prefer the personal approach of a machete. They have since turned from face tattoos. They used to get the MS-13 tattooed on their face, but they realized that made them easy to identify. So they used to get the classic face tattoo MS right here and like 13, devil horns, things like that to show that they were MS-13. Eventually, like I said, they stopped doing that because too many people were able to identify them. Because once they got really big, a lot of people were like, okay, we know exactly who you are. But they realized, again, that was it. Now, I could go on and tell you the whole history about them, but this is just the groundwork into what I want to talk about. And what I wanted to talk about isn't a what, it's a who. Her name is Brenda Paz. She was an acquaintance of mine. We weren't friends, but we knew each other. Yeah, we knew each other. We weren't friends. But we didn't like, she wasn't an enemy. She wasn't unknown. I knew who she was. I knew who Brenda was. In fact, if I dig through boxes of old stuff, all the way back to when I used to live at my grandparents' house, I could probably find a picture of Brenda. I honestly think I could. But I'm not going to do that right now. I ain't got time for that. That'd take like weeks to find. Unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 17 in 2013, or 2003, I mean. At that time, I would have been around 15, 16. And this was the time when MS was taking over, and she was a part of MS. She was part of their inner circle at this point, right? In 2002, she admitted something that so few will ever admit to. She was in the inner circle. She knew about hits that were not reported, hits, attacks, drug deals, all that. She knew about everything. She was in it. So one day she decided that she'd had enough. She didn't want to go to prison or jail or whatever you want to call it for participating or not even being a part of something, because it was getting real. Like I said, the gang was getting serious, not serious, but the consequences were getting serious. They were getting more notification, more notoriety. So she didn't want that. She didn't want to go to prison. So she did the only thing she thought she could do to get out. She became an informant. Now she had told them about up to 60 plus cases. She gave them intel on 60 plus cases that were able to be solved because of her. And she gave details that nobody else would know. This would be part of her downfall, because she was saying things that only those who knew would know. You know what I mean? And this decision would cost her. She knew what the results could be. One of the tattoos that you get when you're in MS-13 is the 3 little dots. And the Mexican mafia that has a meaning, but to them, they change the meaning. So the original meaning of the 3 little dots is Mi vida loca, my crazy life. But MS gave it their own meaning. The 3 places you could end up: jail, the hospital, or the grave. And she was going to the grave. She didn't want the hospital. She didn't want jail. She wanted out. So a little bit about her. She was born in Honduras to a poor family. She was the perfect target for the gang. Now, normally girls are initiated differently than guys. Sorry about that. They're usually passed around sexually. So like I said, running a train. Like I said, Urban Dictionary is your friend on that one. But she was different. She was tough. She didn't want that. So she opted for the male version of getting jumped in by 13 other gang members. She was tough, street smart, charming. She was, she was a good person. Beside the whole gang activity, and we've put that into that little caveat there. Her nickname was Smiley. Now, she wasn't murdered in Texas. It was in her original hometown in Virginia. So when she was born in Honduras, they moved to Virginia. That's where she grew up. When they found her, she was almost decapitated. And the autopsy revealed another secret. She was, again, trigger warning, pregnant. 4 months pregnant. And from what I remember, she was pregnant from one of the members in the gang. Because I believe at the time she did know she was pregnant, but I don't think she told that many people. I think I was one of the few people that found out. She didn't tell me. I found out. So rumors, you know what I mean? High school, middle school, high school, whatever, high school. So from what I remember, she was pregnant. One of the gang members. So she's cooperating and in the gang. She's cooperating with law enforcement and in the gang. You don't do that. Gangs have strict rules about that. You can everything from being ostracized, which means you're cut out of everybody's life. No one will ever talk to you again. And that's taking it easy on you. That's taking it easy on you. That's almost unheard of. You will usually get beat. You will usually get hurt. You're going to get hurt some way, shape, or form. So to avoid all of that, right? Gotta mind making sure that TVC's on. So, but MS, they have a different rule. Theirs is you're going to get taken out. That's it. You're going to get taken care of. That's officially your last day, right? So that's their code. If you betray them, they will have a meeting. And if you're greenlit, which is what they call like targeted or picked for death or whatever you want to say, it's called greenlit to them. If you're greenlit, that's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No questions, no second chances, nothing. Now, this gang operates with brutal efficiency. They hold meetings like a business. And like any business, they check in on their own people. They do their own investigations to ensure loyalty. So, at my company, at the job I work at, we have our own in-house like messaging group, and it's monitored by the higher ups. And that's kind of like what they did. They didn't have a messenger group, but they kept tabs on each other to make sure they were loyal. And that's another way they found out too. So now cops are solving a lot of crime. They're getting suspicious, right? And now now they're like, wait, she's calling somebody in secret. Who is she talking to? So now they're suspicious even more. She had kept it under wraps for so long, but they already knew what she was doing. Yeah, they kind of pieced the pieces together. Partially because only she had some of the information that led to some of the crimes, but they also had her friends checking in on her. So on top of working with the police and the feds, she was also being spied on by her own friends, and they kind of pieced it together like, oh, she's a snitch. She's working for the cops. And the police and the feds are constantly telling her, don't talk to anybody, stop, don't say anything, don't do nothing, just go into hiding. So she's warned many times by police and investigators, but she was isolated, alone, and pregnant, and in witness protection program. Alone and pregnant, being alone and pregnant became too much for her. She eventually told someone she trusted. That was the last nail in the coffin. That was it. That was the final piece of the puzzle they needed to officially greenlight her. And she was greenlit for death. She had called and met up with a few of them before leaving Texas. Almost like a premonition, they drove by the Trinity River. Trinity River in Texas runs all the way. Like here, I'm in Arlington. The Trinity River goes to Dallas. So this is a big river, right? It snakes through all of Texas or all of Dallas, the Metroplex. But like I said, like a premonition, they drove by the Trinity River where they had left a body there recently. They talked about it and laughed. They had a good time. They were just relaxing, having a good time. They partied. Then she went back into witness protection and was taken to Virginia to be kept safe because she was becoming a danger to herself because she was leaving. She was constantly calling people. So they're like, look, we got to get you out of here because this temptation is too much here. So again, alone, pregnant, and scared now, the life became too much for her. She reached out to gang members once again, her family, or what she thought was her family. Like I said, they get you when you're young and they're looking for a target audience of people that are poor, broken homes, whatever you want to call it. They're filling that void that you're missing, that family sense. Because now you're with like-minded individuals, birds of a feather flock together, right? That's what we're saying. So now they got you because now they have something that you want. They have that unity that you want. And this is how they get people. This is how they do it. They get you when you're young and you're vulnerable and you're looking for that family life. And now they have you and you're too entrenched in it that you'll do the dumbest things for them because it's your family. So she reached out to her friends, her family, And that was it. That was the last time she would ever do that. She reached out to anyone, or she reached out to her boyfriend. And little did she know that she was greenlit. They went from Texas to Virginia and held a meeting there to greenlight her, to make it official. So there wasn't okay, we're going to greenlight her in Texas, get our asses to Virginia. No. It was, we're going to go to Virginia, talk this out, figure it out, and done. That's it. That's what they did. They drove up there, figured it out, got it taken, and they're like, okay, cool. We know what we're doing. The members had a meeting previously. If I'm not mistaken, they were like in the same hotel or nearby. They were in a hotel close by, about her and had chosen that she had betrayed them, and she needed to be dealt with. With her reaching out to friends, they knew exactly where she was at. So the day before they gathered and put it to a vote. Like I said, they worked like a business, so they voted on it. And they all agreed that she had to be dealt with. The very next morning, her boyfriend called her and asked if she wanted to go fishing. Go hang out with friends like old times back home in Texas, in Dallas. On a warm summer day in Virginia, 4 friends went fishing along a peaceful river. As they got their gear set up, one of them baited his line, threw his hook out, and was getting ready to fish, right? So one of them didn't know what the hell was going on. He was there to actually fish. And he looks over and he sees a horrible sight, a horrific thing, and he runs. What did he see? 2 of the other individuals there, her boyfriend and another man, or another guy, stabbing her. They stabbed her a total of 13 times. And when she asked them why they did this to her, why they were doing this to her, all they could say was, because you're a rat. And they interviewed one of the guys in prison. He's serving a life sentence at the moment. During an interview with one of them said, one is not born an assassin or born practicing where you have to stab someone to kill a person on the first try. I would have wanted for her not to have suffered. Do you understand? From the point where it was painful. So he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he had to, because this is what the gang wanted him to do. But he didn't want her to suffer, but they stabbed her 13 times. Like he said, there's no way to do this right on the first try. Soon after this happened, one of her close friends in the gang did what she couldn't do. Her friend did what Brenda couldn't do. She testified against the gang. She didn't care about her safety. She did it because they did something so horrific. When the news got out that she was pregnant, 4 months pregnant, her friend was like, no, they killed her. They killed her best friend and they killed the baby. She had enough. She knew that testifying against them was a death sentence. She knew that if she did it, she would be marked for death. She would be greenlit next. At the time that it happened, she told reporters and everybody that she did not expect to survive for the next 2 years. Now, I don't have any updates on her. I can't find her name. They kept it under wraps because she testified against them. So she wasn't going to be like, "Oh, my name is such and such." This is, they didn't do that. I'm pretty sure if I look it up, I might be able to find it now, but I have not been able to find anything up to now. I don't have any updates on her. But other members of the gang who were there were acquitted or decided to leave the gang in fear. Because the cops were after them. So they had to disband, or they had to just live looking over their shoulders, right? But a lot of those people that were there that happened, not that had the meeting and everything, but those that were there that night, even if they were acquitted, they were charged with other crimes. So they are still serving sentences. It may not be for Brenda, but they are serving sentences. Now, this is what they say about the gang. The gang will always get their targets if it takes 20 years, then it will get you. MS does not forget anyone that wrongs them. MS doesn't forget. If it takes 20 years for them to finally hunt you down, guess what? They've been hunting you for those 20 years. Now, shortly after all of that happened, Carrollton, Texas launched a joint operation with the federal department, the feds, FBI, CIA, whoever. I don't know who I think it was the feds, federal FBI. They targeted low rent apartments where there was a large amount of Hispanics living there. Now, they were not targeting specific groups. They were not there like today's federal department. We're not going to speak too much about that. But no, they were targeting specific, areas because they knew that these areas had criminals in it because they had police records. I got to make that expressly knowledgeable. Not knowledgeable. I have to acknowledge that expressing that they had police records that said, this person here has been charged with the crime and is affiliated with the gang. This person at this complex has been charged. That's what they were doing. They weren't just going and kicking down doors, be like, oh, you're Mexican, come with us. No, they were like, I see last week you were charged with possession and blah, blah, blah. You have gang tattoos. This is what we're looking for. That's what they were looking for. Known criminals. And they started evicting them. They started arresting them, evicting them. They got rid of them. Now, I didn't see all this happen. I'm not going to lie. I didn't see this happen. I heard about it. And shortly after that happened, I got to mark it because I yawned. Shortly after that happened, they evicted everybody. They arrested everybody. You could tell that something happened because when I went around that neighborhood later on, because a friend of mine lived there, it was quiet. It was eerily quiet. Like there wasn't people moving around like there used to be. It wasn't as busy as it used to be. There was not as many cars. They got rid of them. But it wasn't like, I said eerie quiet, but it wasn't like an eerie quiet. It was like a peaceful. And a lot of the areas around there, especially parks, used to have these ridiculously tall hedges where teens would go back there and fight in plain sight. So on Josie Lane, one of the main streets in Carrollton, there was apartment complexes in between two high schools, down the street from a middle school and elementary school. So there was a park complex. They were painted blue. They had these hedges that were like 15, 20 feet tall. And they were thick. They were closely together. Like you couldn't see through them. And they were thick. You could not see through them at all. And people would fight back there. And it was right along the main road. So they were doing this. And the same thing were happening at these other apartments too, that there were these ridiculously tall hedges with a wooden fence so you couldn't see into them. But again, shortly after that, they got rid of the hedges. They got rid of the fence, put up a chain link fence so you could see through it. And now you can't really fight there no more. I mean, people still do. Whatever, right? Things don't change. My daughter told me that like that's where they would fight. I don't think she ever fought. She didn't tell me she fought. I don't know. I don't remember anymore. But yeah, so they put an end to a lot of that threat. They put an end to that temptation. Do gangs still exist in Carrollton? Yes, they're going to exist everywhere. I don't care what kind of a safe city you think you live in. I don't care if you live on the Bible Belt. I don't care if you live in an HOA. Gangs are everywhere. They infiltrate everywhere. Just because your neighborhood, your fence isn't colored, isn't tagged up with gang markings, does not mean that they're not there. They've gotten smart. They know what people are looking for nowadays. They know what police look for. They know what other people look for. They know what other gangs look for. So they're not marking their territory like they used to. They're getting creative with it. So they may have calmed down a fair bit, but the threat still lingers, and it lingers everywhere. But remember this, MS does have a pattern that they follow, and that they followed this for years, decades. Small town that's safe with the recent uprise in Hispanic community, and they will slowly build up an army until one day you blink and they're everywhere. Next thing you know, all you hear is about MS-13. The last I heard, all of them moved up towards the Chicago, Minnesota area. I know those are two different fucking states. I'm not stupid. But they moved up there north. They moved up north. Somewhere where I normally, like, if you know me personally, I will normally say Mexicans don't go up there. Hispanics don't go up there. It's too cold. Yeah, that's where they went. They went there because it's least suspecting. But Mexicans are also everywhere too. But still, anyways, beyond the point, that's where they went. And over the years, I've noticed that more and more gang-related crimes have come out of these areas. So always be aware of everything around you. Be safe. And until next time, stay spooky, everyone.